The Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium presents Kathleen Calbert and Maggie Paul, recorded live via Zoom on Sunday, July 12th, 2020.
Welcome to the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium July reading. This is the third one we've done via Zoom as this pandemic has kept us confined and as we continue to shelter in place. The consortium, as many of you know, is an affiliation of poets in the Monterey Bay area and has been presenting readings for many years, carrying on the tradition established by the former local chapter of the National Writers Union. We're on Facebook at Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium, and if you haven't yet liked that Facebook page, please do. And you can also ask to join the Facebook page, and you for sure will be clicked in and admitted. The dean and the driving force behind the consortium is John Lowy, and he was involved back with the National Writers Union. So John's been really our mainstay here and our steady guide and force as we move forward. So I want to thank you all for being here virtually. And I want to thank you for navigating Zoom and getting into the system, which is a little bit tricky at times. But it's a wonderful way for us to stay together, even though we can't physically be together at Old Capitol Books as we used to. And we'll get to do that again someday. Today we're going to enjoy the poetry of two outstanding poets who've read with us before, Kathleen Calbert and Maggie Paul. They are locally based, and each of them is going to read for 20 to 25 minutes. So I'd invite you just to sit back, enjoy, and if you wouldn't mind, please muting your speaker microphone so that we hear just our poets reading. That would be great. And we will unmute at the end for conversation and questions if there are any. Okay, our first poet is Kathleen Calbert, who's the author of 4 books of poems, Lessons in Space, Bad Judgment, Sleeping with a Famous Poet, and The Afflicted Girls. Her writing has also appeared in Ms., The Nation, The New Republic, the New York Times, the Paris Review, Poetry, the Southern Review, and the Women's Review of Books. Kathleen's awards include the 92nd Street Y Discovery Poetry Prize, a Pushcart Prize, and the Mary Tucker Thorp Professorship at Rhode Island College, where she taught for a number of years, and has now retired from there and lives out here in the Monterey Bay area. Her website is on the flyer that was distributed to everybody, but it's www.cathleencalbert.com. It's a great website. I've gone on there and browsed around, checked out the book titles, and Kathleen's bio and the other things that are there. So I would also recommend that you, after you've heard her read today, that you go on to her website, check it out. All right, Kathleen, thank you for being with us. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob, for doing this for us. I'm really happy to read again with Maggie for the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. I'm happy to be part of that entity. I thought I would read a poem each from my books that have been published, and I thought I'd read a poem or two from manuscripts that have not seen the light of day yet. So this goes back away. My first book, Lessons in Space. This is actually me in it's like a little bride dress, my first communion, holding my nun planter in front of the palm tree in our front yard in California, Southern California. I think of this book as being a lot about where I'm from, my childhood and place. and then about moving on. It ends with some poems about travel. But I thought I'd read a poem from my misspent youth, as one of my teachers had once said. This poem actually was inspired too by a fellow graduate student who read a really nice poem in workshop about a woman whose boyfriend told stories about having a monkey, and the monkey would go in the refrigerator and get eggs out and then run around with eggs under its arms. Not sure if that ever would have been true, but that was the story. And as the relationship ends, she gets to keep the eggs. So it's a nice parable about, when we part ways from one another, we can kind of carry off each other's eggs and keep the stories. So I thought that, but I also thought, I don't think the poet knows what it's like to live with a monkey. And unfortunately, I did. So I wrote this called Living with Monkeys. It's not a nice thing, not a nice idea, or it might be a nice idea, who knows? King Kong, Mighty Joe Young, Cheetah, but it's not nice, not really. Living with monkeys is not pretty. Beside the quart of chocolate milk, which had to be divided equally, my brothers and sisters slowly measuring, live worms in plastic containers were kept bean dip style in the refrigerator, because a monkey likes to eat such things, and it pleased my father to please a monkey. They were all his idea, after the guinea pigs had eaten their offspring, and we had lost the parrot, abandoned the alligator. Sometimes they can die pretty quickly. One did of TB, all animal, ethereal, swaddled in white towels and rocked to its end by my mother, who hated it, and who wouldn't stop weeping over this, her last and strangest baby. The other thrived on special treats. Sometimes my brothers gave it something dazzling to eat, a cricket or a lizard, and watched happily as the littlest hands in the family ripped up little living things. Oh, they had little hands, little nails, eyelids, eyelashes, and their eyes beyond reason, human, inhuman. Do you know what it's like to look a monkey eye to eye, a real monkey who likes to bite, who will challenge you to fight for your food or your right to pass by? Why would anyone think this was good? How long could this life be withstood? When my father parted ways with the family, we knew what to do. Leave that monkey outside. He stayed in his cage, cold and unclean, while we went on our desperate first dates, coming home to smoke dope as we sat in the swings of the rusty swing set left by a younger family in the rented backyard full of yellow thistles and anonymous, vicious little dogs who like to fly up and bite down our clothes from the clothesline. And when the last monkey finally died, and the dogs had run away, and our cat had run away, we knew what to do. We changed jobs, changed schools, left friends, and moved closer to the ocean so we could start all over again. This is my second book, Bad Judgment. This is not me. This is the Venus Rubino, although the little dog looks like one of my little dogs. And if I have to characterize my books, I don't know why I'm doing that, but I guess I would say this is my sort of sex, loneliness, love book. It ends with some marriage poems. One, much to the mortification of my husband, is titled In Praise of My Young Husband. But I thought I would read the title poem from this. It's a list poem. It actually zigzags across the page. And I guess I think of somebody zigzagging. That's why I have it spaced like that, I think. There are examples of bad judgments, but also of the excuses we make, the little lies we tell each other and tell ourselves, I think. Bad judgment. It's on the line. The sun's in your eyes. The time you thought it would be all right to go for a drive alone at night. He didn't mean it. I'll never do it again. You can trust him. I think she's really a friend. I bet the child will be all right where he is. It doesn't get dark until late. I'll take the red eye, have the cheesesteak. You keep track of the receipts. We'll only meet for coffee. I'll weigh less in a couple weeks. I'll take the job. I'll marry him. I'll see my mother in the spring. No hurry. I'm not even sleepy. I can drive all night. Don't worry. Shall we get some cigarettes? How about chocolate martinis? Is the water supposed to be green? It's all right I'm not ovulating. It's all right I'm clean. It's all right I haven't been with anyone else lately. Having a baby will bring us closer together. I can stand another cup of coffee. Let's get the puppy. Let's get the aquarium. Let's get another puppy. I think that's as big as a dog like that gets. He's just lonely. Why don't we not plan anything? If the book's good, they'll publish it eventually. Why don't we paint the whole thing? We could knock down a wall. We could dig up these trees. I think I'll wait to have a baby. I bet these sores don't mean anything. My doctor knows what's best for me. My dentist knows what's best for me. My therapist knows I'm trying. I feel I'll never lose you. We'll keep writing. You're sensitive. That's why you do these things. I'll just watch a little TV. I'll talk to him, but I won't say anything. We'll talk, but we won't do anything. If I tell him how I feel, if he tells me how he feels, I want him to be honest with me. I only want to know the truth. Not knowing hurts worse. Henna just makes your hair shiny. It's too overcast to burn. He's staying for the children. She doesn't understand him. They're not even sleeping together. Everybody parks here. They never ticket. They almost never tow. There's an undertow, but you hardly feel it. This will pinch a little. This might smart. You'll only feel a tug. Are you crazy? They love company. I don't think she meant anything. Why don't you go talk to her? I bet the two of you can straighten it out. If I were you, I'd leave him. I'd perm my hair. I'd get that outfit. I only want what's best for you. I know you do. I love you too. I was in a bad mood when I wrote that poem. My third book is titled Sleeping with a Famous Poet. I have this painting, actually. It's called Repose, up on my walls. And unfortunately, this is not a memoir. And it's not it's not a personal narrative poem either. It's actually a persona poem, the title poem, I mean, in the voice of a young woman who sleeps with a visiting poet and is reflecting upon that afterwards. Apparently there are such things as poetry groupies. Hard to imagine, but it's true. And I think this is sort of an eclectic collection, some personal narratives, some more surrealistic, non-narrative pieces. So I don't know that it's a poem that characterizes it. I thought I'd read another poem that reflects again more on my youth, growing up. Actually, this was a kind of a fun creative writing exercise to do with some students, to have them write a poem that began my life as a, and then something that they were in their past. It could have been as an idiot, as a paratrooper, and for me, as for many young women across the land, maybe especially in a certain era, I went through a witchy period in high school. It's in 4 short sections. They don't really matter. I might try to pause a little bit between them. It's called My Life as a Young Witch. As smart as Dark Shadows' Kate Jackson, as sad as Mod Squad's Peggy Lipton. Sorry, it includes some lyrics too that I'm sampling throughout. Strange brew, killing what's inside of you. Vintage negligees on the street. Velvet capes in Newport Beach. She's like a cat in the dark, and then she is the darkness. Barefoot in satin, no underpants. Honestly, no underpants. Love is kind of crazy with a spooky little girl like you. Weird girl, little witchy thing, poorly educated sorceress. Stop leaving him poems written in curlicues, full of lonely wolves and you, devouring his desire like one of Colin Wilson's space vampires. Instead of Isis, please guide him to my side. Let me hear the roar of his Kawasaki up my drive. How about, I'll give you a call. I've got to go. I've got things to do. That he'd love a witch, what was I thinking? Under a crescent moon, I plant 3 watermelon seeds. Who wants a witch for more than a few weeks? Entwine your hair with mine, bind our hearts for eternity. It's nice for a change, that spilled wine intensity. His blood, my blood, his soul encircled by my love. But what about Disneyland? Dancing at parties, sing-alongs, apple bobbing. Did Stevie Nicks ever marry? Where are her children? Why did you have to drown in him? Why didn't you even exist? And this is The Afflicted Girls. This is definitely a unified collection. I think it was my Screwed Up Women book. Mostly dramatic monologues. I started writing some, and then I started writing more and more. From biblical figures, historical figures, literary figures, and women just who interested me, like the murderer, Eileen Wuornos. So I thought I'd read this one. It's a little bit long to go through. It's 2 pages, and it's kind of a big book. This is for a poet that you'll recognize, and a poet who has interested me and also frustrated me for a number of years. It's an epistolary poem, and the title is the address to the letter. It is Dear Miss Dickinson. I wouldn't mind sleeping with Shelley or Keats if either of them were alive and well enough, but it's you that I want to grab hold of and make answer all my questions. Tell me, beauty's kangaroo, death's girlfriend, from our perspective in the 21st century, how would you classify your problem? Agoraphobia, social anxiety, New England eccentricity? Dickinson never fully believed his lily-wielding, partially cracked acolyte even wrote poetry. How you drained him. Without touching her, she drew from me. He only wanted to help you learn control, but his range was too narrow for a girl who'd become the grande dame of American letters. Yours by the white election, isn't that what you said? Queen Recluse, Samuel Bowles, shouted up the stairs for you to cut out the nonsense and come down. You obeyed, you laughed, you were witty. Obviously, you weren't always crazy. What I want to know is, did you know what you were doing? Did you have trouble rhyming? Were the dashes because you were lazy? Or were the verses really journal entries, valentines to a world that never wrote to you? If so, why not burn the neatly sewn parcels to better keep your barefoot rank? Surely you knew you were dying. Little cousins, called back, Emily. This farewell note makes me want to cry. But I wish I knew why you wrote as you did. Were you thinking in gaps? A heap of broken images? Kicking off modern poetry alone in your room in the 19th century? But how could that be? 366 poems in 1862. What did you do? One a day plus an extra for good measure? How could you write at that rate? Didn't you ever masturbate? I mean, you were a grown woman. Did you or did you not die a virgin? Were you a lesbian, in love with Sister Sue, or simply affectionate in a way we can't understand as anything other than sex? How about an early feminist? Victim of your environment, of child abuse? Was the closet typical Yankee discipline? Was your enclosure prison or freedom? Why the little girl pose, the baby, the daisy, then taking the power in your hands? Your face plain, your hair 2 red bands, you became the myth of Amherst. Did you plan it? The whole show, even your retreat into ladylike oddity? Do you think you were mad? Is poetry insanity, or just yours? Yours and William Blake's? I agree, Abyss is its own apology. I understand a revenge of the nerves, despair, hope, meaning, meaninglessness. Believe me, I'm not complaining. I can see wanting the drama, coming out of the house in a slim white coffin. You perfected your finale. So please, be straight with me, because I don't know what you mean. I'll just read one more. I've got 2 manuscripts I'm playing with. One is a strange little sort of fractured fairy tale collection of prose poems. And another is, again, it's sort of love, marriage, reflections on youth, and some reflections on aging, and on teaching. It's called Meals Men Have Made Me. And this is a teaching poem. I lived in Providence when I moved to Rhode Island. The streets actually have these names. And this is based on some experiences teaching, again, very new writers of poetry, trying to work with them and writing poetry. But I hope it's also, so I'm teasing a bit about them. I hope it's clear that I'm also making fun of myself to some degree about doing what I'm doing. It's called An Orange is Like a Tangerine, which is like saying a monkey's like an ape, which is like all of humanity. So say those DNA guys. Though it seems dogs are closer to us. Dogs are like infantile wolves. So said a former poet laureate upon meeting my adorable Pomeranian. What a good boy on Benefit Street, near Benevolent and Hope, but far from Cummings' corner of divinity. And wolves are like coyotes or like foxes, which is what children thought my poem was, though he hated children. Children are like small monsters, so says one of my brothers. That's one of his theories. One of my theories is that I don't know how to teach anyone anywhere anymore. What's desire like? I ask my class. Like really wanting something, says one listless girl. And loneliness? Her yawning comrade offers, like being really lonely. I shake my head. You can't say an orange is like a tangerine. I mean, you can, but it's not a simile. I can tell my students don't believe me. I've used like or as, and this comparison makes sense. An orange is like a tangerine. A cat is like a kitten. Women are like girls, only angrier. Professors are like teachers, but they have it easy. PhDs are like doctors, but they don't help anybody. My students' eyes, empty of metaphors and even their poor cousins' similes, shine with a desire I'm sure to crush like a crazy orangutan before they flee. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was great. I guess it is like an orange and a tangerine are like each other. When you were reading about Emily Dickinson, you said she frustrates you. Were your frustrations what you expressed in the poem, or do you have other ones beyond that?
Generally in life or about her?
About, well, both, but really about her.
I think I'm genuinely mystified by her poetry. I think I have read every single one of her poems.
Wow.
I've taught her. But at heart, there is something that's like, wow, that is just wild. I mean, that's a really interesting thing to say. I don't know what it means. Did you know what that meant? So, I mean, I guess it's in that argument of that realm of, poetry as mystery and not as simply crystal clear. Yeah, but truth should dazzle gradually, or every child be blind. But yeah, she's an interesting and to me frustrating poet, or intriguing. I don't understand her.
Yeah. I've not studied her to the degree that you have, but she's fascinating and sort of a little strange, up there in Amherst, and that was her world.
Yeah, and I've been in her room and I've seen the white dress and all of that, but I think I'm just more intrigued by how truly strange and modern her poetry seemed. And I just wonder how much she was aware of that, if that makes sense. And the heap of broken images is from, T.S. Eliot, thinking about it. It seems like such a modernist poetry. How did you do that in the 19th century?
Yeah. This is a leap probably, would you equate the modernness of her poetry with the modernness of what Walt Whitman wrote? His way of writing and presenting.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would think for many people that would have not seemed like poetry at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really long lines. I tried to explain to students, it's like see if the pages were this long, the line would be this long. It's like, it's cut, why it's doing that, why it's indented there. It keeps going. It's not in prose.
Yeah.
Much of the poetry, it is in some sort of verse, but the lines are so long that they seem to break free of, verse entirely.
Yeah.
And again, the listing,
Yeah.
listing.
Poetry way ahead of its time.
Agree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was great.
Have to read.
Thank you for reading from your books. And I would just tell people that all of those books are listed and described on Kathleen's website. And there are wonderful photographs, as I mentioned, of the covers. So if you want more, and you should, go to Kathleen's website.
Thanks.
Okay, Kathleen, thank you very much. All right, our next poet is Maggie Paul. She's the author of 3 books, Borrowed World, Scrimshaw, and the chapbook, Stones from the Baskets of Others. Her poetry reviews and interviews have appeared in the Catamaran Literary Reader, Rattle, the Monterey Poetry Review, the Porter Gulch Review, Red Wheelbarrow, Frenzy, Salt, and others. She's an education consultant and writing instructor in Santa Cruz. And in these pandemic times, she's available to help people with the challenges of learning remotely via the internet. For information on Maggie's publications, you can go to the website that's listed on the flyer that we circulated with the announcement. Or you can just Google Hummingbird Press, which is a wonderful press, local press with terrific local poets. So I would urge you to check that out. Check out Hummingbird Press. There are other poets on there, or in their assembly, who have also read with us. But right now we get to listen to Maggie with some of her poems. And so Maggie, over to you. And Maggie, you're muted, so we'll want to unmute you. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Yes, I want to thank you and John Lowy and the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. It's always a delight and very fortunate to have you guys doing such good work. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm so happy to hear Kathleen's poems. And now I want to change my whole reading, but I won't, but I will. I'd like to do a segue. I wrote a poem in which Emily Dickinson is speaking, but my questions are not in the poem. So I think I'll just read that and see what you all think. But it's from my first book, Borrowed World, and it goes like this. It's called Emily Dickinson Interview. Behind me dips eternity. Before me, immortality. Myself, the term between. Emily Dickinson. Yes, I was alone. Yes, it was natural to become acquainted with life at the point of my pen. The days were long. No, the nights were not longer. I wouldn't call it sadness, just grief's cousin, whom I managed to befriend. No, I was not surprised. I kept alive by loving. No earthly voices could alter that. They were close, but never got inside. There were so many robins, windows, trees, coffins. Here, there is more brilliance than can be imagined. New definitions of pale. The letters no longer fall and reverberate. It's more like an endless chime. How did I know? I could tell by how it burned. So my new book is called Scrimshaw, and as Bob said, it's from Hummingbird Press. And the epigraph to, or one of the epigraphs to the entrance of the poem is a quote by Rilke, which says, "Your life is a stone in you. One moment your life is a stone in you, the next a star. From a line by Jack Gilbert. The Chinese say, when you write a river, you are the river. But today I am more the rain, rinsing the river's ruddy throat, or yesterday's sun, trying to swallow some dark delay between my 4 o'clock curtains. Mornings can be a ground to lay our sorrows upon, a hard gift, a tree trunk of a thing, where the past surges up like a fountain and cascades at our feet. It floods the world, the one we step into, the one we walk out of. I recently lost both of my parents in the past 3 years, and made me think about time quite a bit. This is a poem called My Time. I took my time, which I thought I had, being of middle age and still able to walk, run, and fret over minor concerns. I took it as if it were free, and there was plenty of it. But that was before I saw my father, confined to wheelchair and walker, settling for tasteless food and foreign women to accompany him to the bathroom. And my mother, in hospital gown, a priest at her door, Hail Mary, full of grace, on her ice-chipped lips once more. Now it is clear the sky has a ceiling, and every hour a final hand. So I live on a little pond in Santa Cruz at the base of the campus of UCSC, and this poem came out of observing 2 little girls having a blast on the pond one day, and it is called Minnows. 2 young girls, thin as reeds, wade into the pond, red plastic pails and auburn braids leaning into their small shadows, mirrored by shallow water, pointing and playing with minnows and crayfish. Today's delight? To capture a living thing smaller than themselves. So few things being smaller than a young girl with a pail at a pond. Watching them, I lean on the soft shoulder of memory, of being raised by water, soul-soaked in ponds, lakes, and rivers. Some that claimed classmates' lives, usually boys, who for love of flying above their shadows jumped onto reckless rope swings of darkness, daring to come up victors, immortal, alive. Mine was a small town tucked between 4 vivid seasons, between the city and the shore. Nothing much to do but risk your life some way or another to feel alive. I did it too, from one summer to the next, dove into black lakes well past dark, and floated fully naked with open arms to the night sky. Tried to make the stars glisten on my skin the way they did on the water's surface, dance and glisten, and perhaps take a little of me with them as they moved across the sky. Why not join the symphony of starlight, try to touch the eternal? Life, we heard, was short, childhood shorter, and I wanted to have mine, the way these young girls want, to take home the minnows and crayfish and keep them, their secret, if for no other reason than to claim for themselves a small life, something mysterious as water or night, as I did in that small town, which I knew was only a freckle on the face of the whole universe. Let's see. These are just a few short little moments strung together, thoughts strung together, and I just call them spring thoughts. You namaste me, I namaste you, but the homeless still huddle on the corner of Pacific Avenue. In half an hour's time, the moon will hide behind its hoodie. Then someone will come along and accuse it of theft. In Syria, another 70 killed while the sun keeps shining. On the cover of the New Yorker, 2 bikes, 2 hearts, a man and a woman content on a park bench. How unlike us. I sat through the credits and listened over and over to that sentimental theme song. I was only missing my father. My friend, my age, is in hospice. This is spring, she asks. Okay, let's see. Why I don't phone in the morning. I tell my friend I'll phone in the morning, but this is a lie. Lately it seems time is coming after me. I don't know who or what to trust. The body, the mind, the summer air that barely speaks above a whisper. Body and mind seem strung together like cables on a bridge, same as the one a child makes with string between forefinger and thumb. That sort of rocking first felt in the womb, then sought after the rest of our lives. Linguistics. I like my silence because it's mine. Let the sea speak without interruption for once. Let it slur its words and swallow syllables the way we do when learning a new language, trawling for sounds, then pulling them back, aware of their imperfection. It was imperfect how we laid together without touching once the truth tumbled out, how the blanket was used as a fence between our past and future, but the bed pretended to be one world. You told story after story in 2 tongues and mistook my silence for a kind of love. Perhaps it was a kind of love, though not the kind you grew to expect. It had thunder and trembling in it. So much goes on beneath the surface that the tide never washes up. Let's not underestimate the sea, the beds of coral and dark cave secrets that lie there. Perhaps it is we who are imperfect and love a language which, from time to time, is not meant to be ours. I know these are not very cheery. Okay. This is a poem that I wrote in February, just as the virus was showing itself. It's called A Dark Circle. And it has a quote from Albert Camus, which says, "Orders, when what's needed is imagination." A dark circle. Is the breeze blooming behind my curtains the breath of life or death? Hard to tell, the way a secret is invisible but has a narrative and spreads, attaching itself to your breath or mine, hiding on the key latch, the metal knob to our front door, or the button I've just undone, the white towel seeming clean as a cloud. Outside, a solitary plane shakes the still sky. In the valley, farmers fear dust particles that sail on dry wind, then catch in their throats. Who will pull artichokes, garlic, peppers, and onions from the ground? There is talk of the thin veil between worlds. Some blessed or cursed see through to the other side. Yesterday, when I asked the child with the red crayon in her hand what she was drawing, she said it was a secret, but it looked like a dark circle covered with crowns. I don't want to go on too long, and so let's see. I have 2 more poems. Is that okay, Bob?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, for time. Okay. This is called Preemptive Elegy, Should We Move to Mars? I personally don't want to move to Mars, but I know it's seems to be in discussion. For starters, I would miss the notion that this bouquet called Earth is home. October monarchs, summer lupin, the mustard flower, spring forsythia. I would miss January's darkness, the way a day is born, every tree from root to leaf, and the yoga of a lone sun setting. I might miss the snake, though I fear it, or the lion, though it rules me. I would miss your hand on my arm as I am about to go on a journey, and the space that gets filled when I return. All the heavens I would miss, looking up at them from foot to sky. And I would miss the word for heaven, just calling it that. So the last poem I'll read is the title poem from my book, Scrimshaw. And the first poet I refer to in here is Louise Gluck. And I was so delighted to learn that she just won the Nobel Prize in Literature. It was very, very wonderful, well-deserved. Scrimshaw. Once a very great poet said she preferred the slow circling labor of writing, that when she thinks she no longer has any agency, she talks to the poem like a person she loves and asks it what it needs. I serve it little dishes, a variety of things, and see if it eats. She ignores the tiny ants roaming around the edges of her notebook and writes for the reader, on whom nothing will be lost. Another poet, after a lifetime of writing, says, it's still in agony to this day. Yet I continue marking blank pages, as if I am walking toward the January dusk, leaving my boot treads on a road deep with snow. It can feel like winter any time, despite a perfectly generous sun and no snow on the ground. In the silence of night, if you listen, you can almost hear a poet etching Scrimshaw onto bone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Maggie. That was wonderful. That's great. We can all relate, I think, to talking to a poem as if it were a person. It's this creature that our paper sits patiently waiting for us to put the poem down, and then we have this back and forth with it until both it and we are satisfied with it, at least at that point. And that's great. And you mentioned Camus, for the poem you wrote at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown. I still haven't gotten myself up to reread Camus' The Plague.
Yes.
Which, of course, came to mind the moment we were confined to our version of the city of Oran,
yes,
where Dr. Rieu and his life unwound existentially in that.
Yes.
So thank you. And I love some of the images that you shared with a soft shoulder of memory. Join the symphony of starlight, trawling for sounds, images that were rich and great.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you both. This has been really great. It's wonderful to hear you read, and we'll have you back again. We'll do this some more. Hopefully we won't be Zooming by then, but you never know. And indeed, there's some interest now in not only reading in person when we're able to do that, but at the same time videoing it so we can distribute it out to our audience. I think
That's
fantastic.
That'd be great. Yeah. I think what this experience, one of the silver linings in this cloud is the fact that we are reaching out to a lot of people through Zoom
It's true.
And
Yeah.
our audiences are from all over, really all over. We've had people in Germany and all over the United States. So it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
While we're doing this, we'll do it again Sunday, August 9th with Dan Linehan and Doran Robbins, two wonderful poets. And in the meantime, as always, please stay in touch via Facebook and the Monterey Bay Poetry Consortium. And if you haven't, as I said, liked us, please do. And please join the consortium, at least on Facebook. And a big thank you again to our wonderful
Thank
poets.
you.
Thanks to you,
Thanks,
Bob.
being here.
Kathleen. Really loved it. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Me too for you.
Great.
Thank you. And thanks for giving us some light and life in these times.
Thank
So
you.
take care, and
Okay.
we'll see you guys in the audience for our
All right.
next reading.
Definitely. All right.
Sounds good.